Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stuart Salter, and you are attending our third annual Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce Small Business Forum. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Our group today includes our co-moderator, Tom Henry, recently retired from Total. We have Senator Brandon Creighton that will be joining us. Judge Jeff Brannick is already on the line here, and we expect to have Port Arthur Police Chief Tim Durso and the newly installed emergency coordinator for Port Arthur, Jeremy Houston. Before we start bringing on today's guest, I'd like to quickly recap what we've reviewed in our first two sessions. Initially, we focused a lot on the payroll protection program. Blaine Collier with First Financial Bank provided us a great deal of information. That information is still available on our websites. If you'll go and just click on the first or the second meetings that we have, that information has been memorialized on the website. Additionally, Linda Tate provided details regarding not only the payroll protection program, but as well as the other loan programs that are available. And we would encourage those that are still seeking loans or wanting to know how to handle the loans that they already have to reach out to both of those individuals at their convenience. Laura Van Guren with the Southeast Texas Workforce Board and provided the new resources as well as the existing resources that they have available to respond to employers' needs as it results to the COVID and lockdown. And Kimberly Purnell, also with Southeast Texas Workforce, some child care services that are made available for employees to take care of their kids during the lockdown. I'm personally aware of one young mother who was able to take advantage of that and continue her full-time employment. So Kimberly can give you all the information you need about that. And finally, Farhana Swati with Fallows International provided us some wonderful information on best practices in the workplace to ensure a safe environment for both your employees and your customers. So again, I would encourage anyone with interest in those items to go to the Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce website, click on the appropriate link, and you'll have all the information you need. Tom, are you out there right now?
Yes, I am.
All right, well, welcome, Tom. I think you sat in on one or two of those. Was there anything that you wanted to comment on those, or did you want to mention anything about hurricane season while we're getting going?
Well, other than it's my least favorite time of the year, of course, but I do want to say real quickly, from an industrial standpoint, of which I'm recently released now after 41 years, but in all that time, we've had our fair share of storms and preparations and whatever. But there's two things, of course, that really are the most important, and that's planning. With a capital P, and then also depending on your organization or whatever, how big it is roles and responsibilities, and making sure that everybody has a part in the planning and even the execution of the aftermath and whatever else. But certainly planning for it is a huge piece, and you can never control a storm, of course, and where it goes, but certainly if you've planned for it as best you can, things tend to fall in place at least a whole lot better, of course.
Thank you, Tom. Well, with that said, we're going to go ahead and move into today's presentation. Our first presenter is Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick. He's going to give us an update on both hurricane preparedness, I suspect a little bit about COVID, and whatever else is going on in our county. Judge Brannick, thank you for joining us today.
I can't give you an exact plan right now. We have a meeting with our scheduled Division of Emergency Management on June 24th to discuss disaster preparedness and recovery in the age of COVID. And I can't tell you what the end result plan will be, but I can tell you that we are stocking up on personal protective equipment that under any set of circumstances, we will still have search and rescue operations that will take place in the event those become necessary. If there's a necessity for an evacuation, we will still have our hubs where we take the 211 population and send them off on buses to shelters in other areas that are predetermined by the Texas Division of Emergency Management in advance of every season. We may have additional buses where we do temperature testing on all the individuals that are getting on the buses, and to the extent we have some that are hot or have other symptoms of COVID-19, then we would probably segregate them out on other buses for transfer so that they don't endanger the 211 population. Because right now in Texas, as we look at it, we have seen a 33% increase in COVID cases in Texas over the last 2-week period. Most of those spikes that we're experiencing in Texas are coming from prisons, meatpacking plants, and nursing homes, which is why the governor worked with the local jurisdictions to have all the nursing home tested the last couple of weeks, nursing home residents and staff. So moving on, it's a good exercise. We normally don't have storms this early in the season, but we're already in the Emergency Operations Center. They're monitoring this. We've had calls every day with the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service. We'll have another one this afternoon. The one this morning was absolutely worthless and gave no information that would assist us in doing our planning for this coming weekend, because it was basically could hit anywhere between Galveston and Florida. So, but the Texas Division of Emergency Management seemed to have it coming our direction. So I think it's a little bit late to obtain flood insurance for this storm because there's a 30-day waiting period before it becomes effective. But certainly every year, I think people need to have an appointment with their Mr. Smelter and discuss what their insurance coverages are and their needs are, identifying the types of risks that we experience in Southeast Texas. I think people, especially in the age of cell phones where it's so easy, need to take videos of their home and their valuables and have that available, because when there is a catastrophic loss, the carriers give you documents to fill out where you need to list every item that's in the home. And it's good if you have a video, it helps refresh your recollection of what needs to be done. It's important to gather all your vital documents like passports, medical records, and birth certificates and things of that nature, and put those things in dry bags that aren't impacted by rising water, or bring them with you if you are evacuating. And this is anticipated to be a rather brisk hurricane season by all the different experts in meteorology that I have listened to over the last week on several different webinars that were held by the Texas General Land Office, Texas Division of Emergency Management, even some of the private meteorologists that are hired by industry. Had the opportunity to listen to several of them. We have warmer than usual Gulf waters. We do not have an El Nino. We look like we're going into a La Nina phase, which is beneficial to the formation of hurricanes. They anticipate 13 to 19 storms with approximately 3 major storms that make landfall. It really doesn't matter how many they forecast. If it's only one and it hits your area, it's a bad year. If there's 20 and they all go off into the North Atlantic, it's a great year. So, we can only wait and see what happens And, you know, people need to plan in advance, just as Tom was talking about. You need to, it's good to identify where you plan to evacuate in the event of a mandatory evacuation, you know, which relatives you have or where your camps are out of harm's way, to make sure that you make plans in advance for your animals, because many shelters do not allow animals, and those are always difficult for emergency management personnel to deal with in the aftermath of a natural disaster. We have done it, but sometimes we have difficulty getting those pets back to their original owners. If there is not mandatory evacuation, people need to make sure that in advance, because you know what happens if we are in danger of getting hit by a storm, and the day that the news gets out, water and non-perishable food items are gone off the shelf. So it's important to get those items well in advance of a storm so that you're prepared in the event you lose power. Make sure you get a lot of batteries, and make sure you have lights and portable chargers for your electronic devices. And of course, everyone this time of year should make sure that they have at least a 30-day supply of any pharmaceuticals that they need to take to safeguard their health. It's prudent to always keep your car filled up with gasoline and to have extra gas cans beforehand in the event you need to have generator power, and to have enough cash on hand if you're able to have that, in case ATMs and credit card machines don't have power to them and aren't working. So I've been talking a long time without a break. Are there any?
I'll give you a little break here, but one of the questions we had submitted before the meeting, and you've touched on it, and it may be too early to answer this question, but if we do have a storm come here and a number of our residents need to shelter in place, traditionally we've done that at the Civic Center. We're wondering how that would be facilitated under the COVID conditions we have.
You know, we're working on that plan this morning with the Red Cross, and we're talking about sheltering operations. I can't tell you that I have a firm answer, but we will by tomorrow. And you know, if it comes to a natural disaster that requires that, we're going to have some kind of screening outside of the shelters to, and we'll probably have alternate shelter sites for those that have symptoms or a temperature.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Going back to his comments about getting in touch with your agent, I of course support that strongly, but we are starting to get notices now that the windstorm capacity, not with TWIA, but with some of the other players, are being cut off or will be cut off at midnight. So if you haven't made that phone call, now's a good time to do it. The 30-day waiting period is absolutely correct, and it doesn't get any shorter when you wait longer. So if you have that concern, now is the time to address it. We don't care that there's a storm in the Gulf for flood, because it's not going to do you any good for 30 days anyway. Tom, did you have any questions for the judge?
No, I was just curious, maybe if you've had any indication from Governor Abbott that he might issue any sort of new orders or modified orders or anything like that if we did have a hurricane and had to evacuate, with respect to housing people and social distancing and all the guidelines, whatever.
Yeah, Chief Kidd is working on that at the Texas Division of Emergency Management, which has since become a part of the Texas A&M University system. And every year the chief makes the arrangements for the shelters for each geographical area along the coast where they're going to move inland. We're normally up in the Tyler area with our residents anywhere from Nacogdoches to Tyler, and that will still be the case. And, if there is a mandatory evacuation, I-10 West will be shut down. they want to leave. They want everybody to go from south to north, not sideways. And so 69, 96, 287 will be our evacuation corridors. And, for those people that are retired or have more flexibility in their schedules, those people, when we're fixing to get hit by a storm, it's best for them to go ahead and leave early, particularly if they have a lake house or a second home, to go ahead and get out before the traffic gets so bad, because y'all will recall, and Rita and I, some of the evacuations to Dallas was a 21-hour affair. So
You don't want to do that as a senior.
no. And people need to just do common sense things like keeping the leaves and limbs around their home trimmed. If they have a red oak in their yard, they probably ought to get rid of it, because they don't have good root systems, and when the ground gets saturated, they just fall over on the
All over on a tree. Yeah.
And and if you have a lot of patio furniture and things like that, those need to be brought in the garage before you leave, so that they don't do damage to your home when the wind gets high. So,
Jeff, one more question, if I may. From our merchants, are we at 50% occupancy now for some of them, or are we headed there? Where are we with that?
the governor entered his phase 3 order last night. We are at 75% for some, depending on the number of active cases within your jurisdiction. So Jefferson County's at 50%. They've increased the number of people in a restaurant that can sit at a table from 6 to 10. Symphony halls and public facilities are opened up to 50% occupancy, provided that there's more people in a group than 10, and that there's spaces between those groups of at least 6 feet. And he opened up gyms last week, although my gym's still not open. And
Well, we're getting there, it sounds like.
getting there.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Well, listen, Judge, thank you so much for your time and your input. Hopefully we'll have another one of these. It doesn't look like we're going to have large public gatherings anytime soon. So again, thank you. Next speaker is Senator Brandon Creighton, District 4. He's been our senator for since 2014. I wish he said 19 something, but he's going to bring us up to date on state efforts with COVID as well as other items. Senator Creighton.
Good to be with you. Yeah, I was running a little bit behind getting connected. We're all becoming IT experts in this COVID-19 era, I guess, but we're getting better and better. But it's good to see all of you and to be with you. I was able to catch most of the judge's comments, and it's always certainly a pleasure to work with him. He is a storm recovery and emergency operations expert, not just for Southeast Texas, but people around the state lean on him for advice. So it's a privilege to always work with Judge Brannick. I know we're all kind of working through this process ourselves on recovery and doing what we can to safely get back to normal and to protect the economic front. I wanted to give some updates on COVID-19, certainly the beginning of the hurricane season. We're seeing protests in and around Texas and through the nation. So there's always a lot to discuss. All these issues affect us. They affect our businesses, and they affect our employees and our families. And so it all ties together in just being prepared and being aware and being there for others in the community that ask for answers. And so I always appreciate being able to get together on platforms and formats like this so we can share those answers and keep moving information around. That's the way that we're best prepared to meet challenges. Our effort to get businesses reopened is obviously directly tied to consumer confidence and confidence in this healthcare scare and pandemic that we're all concerned about. And we've, we're over a couple of months into it now, and we're following CDC guidelines and following the governor's efforts and executive orders and local jurisdictions and how they've been able to hand out different ordinances and mandates. But by and large, we've got to be really concerned about the unemployment numbers, because there's so many categories that threaten the health and safety and lives of Texans that are under that category, that umbrella of the unemployment factor itself, as we also battle COVID-19. For small businesses, I know we're trying to get back to business as usual, but until the public is comfortable getting out and about and getting back to their normal patterns, their habits, their spending patterns specifically, we can have economic ups and downs and turbulence even when the entire general public is out and about and doing what they do on a daily basis. But with reservation, we're going to continue to struggle. So as the judge mentioned, the governor's phase 3 reopening updates do increase the percentages of businesses that have been limited to 25%, and those that can go up to 50% now, or that have been higher than that up to this point, are able to exhale. But if you own a business, if you own a restaurant, or you own a business that's service industry related, and you know that those last few tables or those last few customers have everything to do with your profit margin, with those employees, with paying your bills, with just making things make sense, especially if you're carrying debt, that a partial reopening is just not what is going to help our businesses not just flourish, but survive. So we've got to do everything we can to keep tracking the data and to understand, should we be inspiring the public to be motivated and to feel safe and getting back out and about. So in the greater Houston region and through Southeast Texas, we have numbers, in between 5 and 7% as the chance that you might test positive for COVID-19. And if you're one of those 5 to 7%, if you do test positive for COVID-19 and you're under age 60, you have about a 99+% chance of survival. If you're over age 60, that drops to 97.2% chance of survival. So I think as we track hospitalization rates and we track the per capita, test positives and the mortality rate, we also have to talk about survival rate and all the categories that are of concern to us as we go about our daily lives and worry about our family members and our friends and coworkers. So shutting down or cutting capacity with a lot of uncertainty is just very difficult. We've all shown a lot of resolve through that, and most of us have done our best to comply and to do what we can to make sure that everyone is in a safe environment to the best way we can. I'm bullish. I see the virus contained, and our mitigation plan has worked, and hospital capacity is very good level. In fact, some hospitals are saying that their revenue for this year is down. And in a pandemic, that's a surprising statement, because normally if there's a business that is seeing a lot of folks coming in and out of the door, it's a hospital system. The state and the country have a long way to go before we're back. I know Texas is going to feel this economic crisis. Anytime you have 30 to 40 million people unemployed, Texas is over 2 million of that. We're gonna feel it. We have a diverse economy, and we're built as a machine. We're built to work, and we're built to survive, and we're built to weather the storm. But we also, have to keep certain fundamentals in place and to make sure we lead the country on this recovery like we did after the recession of 08 and 09. Texas represented 50% of the private sector job creation for the nation after the Great Recession of 08 and 09. Those aren't government jobs, those are private sector jobs. So I think it's important that we stay on that track and keep that mindset. We're all taking precautions to be careful and safe. The Texas Workforce has a skills development fund that I think is interesting. There's resources for our businesses to get back on their feet. I know many of us have taken advantage of the small business loans and the paycheck protection program. There's also grant programs within the state. One that was announced last month that was a $12 million grant from the Department of Labor to the Workforce Commission. This program is called the Skills Development Fund, and the money is intended to provide training for in-demand jobs, data information, healthcare, transportation, critical manufacturing, other industries that need skilled workers right now. And this is good for companies that need to get employees better trained for skills. I expect Dr. Renard and the Lamar State College at Port Arthur to be a major leader on this. Really our higher education institutions, and I chair that committee in the Senate now, they're going to lead on skills training, workforce development, education, recovery. They're going to be right on the front lines, and I couldn't be more proud of them and a lot of the ways that they've evolved really on plans that might have been 5 to 8 years down the road. They've evolved in a month or two to meet the demand and meet the challenge. So Judge Brannick gave great updates on hurricane preparedness. I certainly couldn't add much to what he has to offer on the call for such. We passed, Dade Phelan and I were fortunate to be able to pass the Senate Bill 7 last session, which was the largest hurricane recovery legislation for Texas as far as legislation in the past. It's the largest bill from a funding perspective that we've ever passed, and the different buckets that for solutions for hazard mitigation projects, for Corps of Engineer projects, for software and mapping updates and other things. I think those are going to be very helpful and orchestrated through the Texas Water Development Board for our local entities to rely on, and it also provides local matching funds for cities and counties to rely on if they just didn't have the budget in place to draw down those big federal dollars. So Southeast Texas is made up of a lot of projects that will receive state funds and leveraging billions of dollars for Texas tax dollars coming back from Washington to work for us. And we just at local, state, and federal level in our community, as far as our leaders and all of you, we've got a great team put together to survive these challenges, to create opportunity out of adversity, and to change where we need to see change and to evolve. And I'm just encouraged and excited to be a part of it with you. And those are my updates. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Senator, and we appreciate you sharing that. And I'm with you. I'm bullish about our ability to overcome the problems that we've had and lead the area as we have in the past with growth. Before you leave, any recommendations? We have about 100 business owners and managers online with us right now. What advice could you give to them to help accomplish the goals you just described? How are we going to get our economy back up and running, people out of their houses, back in the restaurants, doing the things that make this thing hum?
Well, that's one of the best questions that could be asked, and it's on all of our minds is what do we do to take necessary steps to get through this economic recovery and spur it the right direction and make it happen, if not tomorrow, the very next day, as fast as possible. And the first thing we can do is share information because a lot of us are driven by emotion, and that's understandable. And we hear a lot of the rhetoric through the media and from the talking heads online and on national networks and on, but really the data is what's important. And the data is showing that our planning and our strategy, all of us together in being careful and cautious over the past few weeks has worked. And because we have, we talk a lot about social distancing, but we have just geographic distancing in our communities in general, where we're not a New York, right? We don't have a subway system.
Amen, Senator.
we don't have millions of people. And there was a New Yorker at the Alamo, so I'm very thankful for New Yorkers, but we're very different in our geographic makeup and in many other ways. In our, I don't think there's any better resolve to meet a challenge than throwing it at a Texan and waiting to see what happens. So, but if we can share the data with each other that the hospitalization rates are declining and the containment plan, other than spikes in nursing homes, meat packing plants, and in the penitentiaries, as the judge mentioned, there are counties in my district with 20 to 25 deaths for that particular county, and 50% of those deaths were from one nursing home.
Oh.
And every death is tragic. Every single one of them is tragic, and if we can prevent it, we have to give 1,000% to try to do whatever we can to prevent them from happening. But at the same time, there are so many categories under the category of unemployment that are dangerous to Texans: hunger, child abuse, addiction, suicide, all mental health categories, divorce, on and on. You could go all the way down the list. The more that we are not out and about and back to our normal habits and work ethic and effort and spending habits and on, the more that there is a threat that unemployment will grow, and the lives of Texans and the safety of Texans, and especially children, are at risk as we continue to be safe, to make sure those that are vulnerable from a healthcare perspective are following CDC guidelines and staying in, and that we're all careful with our hygiene. We can't work in silos. And so businesses, what can they do to take those necessary steps is just know the data, share the data. We all need to communicate together to build confidence and inspire others to know that with a 97 to a 99% survival rate, we have to get back into the Texas economy and support our local businesses.
Well, thank you, Senator. Tom, do you have any questions for Senator Creighton before we let him go? Is Tom turned on?
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, you can always email them to us or call me direct. I know Pat can get a hold of me for sure. And, we're very accessible there. Our office is in downtown Beaumont, but anytime we need to get on a call and connect the chamber membership together for Port Arthur, I'm ready.
Well, Senator, we've seen your presence here as well as your team, and we appreciate all the support you've been giving us.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks for including me, and it's great to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you, and Representative Phelan also for the priorities that you mentioned concerning workforce training and support of our efforts with hurricane aftermath and even TxDOT efforts to improve the highways for evacuation routes and all those things that are very important, that kind of all come together, that are needed to either prepare for the storm or deal with it afterwards. But thank you.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Dade obviously is a very valuable individual to have in office, and he does a great job in the House. He's considered a leader, and hurricane recovery and storm recovery in the Texas legislature, there's a lot of sympathy for it. But when it comes down to fighting for dollars, and if those dollars could go to tax relief or they could go in different directions, that was a very, very tough bill to pass, as sometimes Lubbock, Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, Dallas, Texas, they don't necessarily they don't necessarily feel the brunt of the storm and the destruction, and they're sympathetic. But when it comes down to voting on appropriating dollars, sometimes that sympathy has an edge or a line or a cliff to it.
Yeah.
So Dave did a great job. I was proud to partner with him, and we'll continue to work on workforce and keeping our university strong, and certainly TWIA reform.
Yeah. Thank you guys for fighting for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the senator is still on, a question just came in, and they'd like to know if the senator will remain the chair for the higher education next session.
Senator Creighton, you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There are always important topics and questions and answers that I would love to get into the mind of the lieutenant governor on whenever he makes certain decisions. And because those appointments are up to him, let's just say that I'm very proud of the first session that we as a committee that we were able to have for Senate Higher Education as a committee. And I think through that performance, I'm expecting to be reappointed to that chairmanship. And I'm very passionate about the work, and my heart makes my heart beat. And we're going to work real hard to get back in that position. So I certainly hope so. And that's what we're doing through the interim. We've got an education work group established that's combined together with public education. Larry Taylor chairs that committee. And he and I are working together to get ready for January. So I hope so. And I'm also working hard to get a seat on Senate Finance, as the two of those are linked, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Yeah.
We hope they make the right decision.
We do have another question from Amy for Senator Creighton.
Senator, you're still with us, right?
I'm still here, yes.
All right.
It says, Senator Creighton, do you know if there will be extending unemployment benefits? So we'll be extending the unemployment benefits.
You know, there's a lot of discussion about it. It just we're working with our federal partners on exactly those topics, and a lot of it is unfortunately politics at the federal level. So I'll just have to answer with a stay tuned on that, and for unemployment benefits, and also for the Paycheck Protection program itself. We're going to have to give it a few more days and continue to watch and see.
Thank you. I have a question, or actually a comment passed on from Judge Brannick. He wanted me to let everyone know that current hospital numbers, including infection rates for the 25 counties in Southeast Texas, can be found at setrac.org. That's SETRAC.org. So again, we've been talking a great deal about sharing information. If you have interest about our current hospital numbers, that information is now available. I see Pat Avery has joined us here on the virtual dais. I don't think we've got our chief or emergency director yet, but I know Pat had some comments she wanted to make, so now might be a good time. Pat?
Thank you, Stuart. Before I make my comments, I'd like to ask Senator Creighton a question as it relates to TWIA. TWIA, for those of you who don't know, is the Texas Workforce Insurance. I have been informed that that commission is thinking about a 20% increase in TWIA costs for us, for those counties on the Gulf Coast. So can Senator Creighton shed some light on that for us?
Yes, Pat, it's a great question, and I was hoping to provoke. I appreciate the question. You know, I had mentioned TWIA earlier because it's on all of our minds as to exactly how the board and leadership with TWIA are going to continue to make decisions. We had a close call right when session ended in late May of 19, when in the summer months they were considering a rate increase then, and we were able to have them defer that. And in the meantime, I was on the phone with Dennis Isaacs yesterday. I think he may be on the call, but
we're having a lot of trouble getting them to share information with us and just to be transparent about the data that they have as they continue to review and consider decisions or rate increases or whatever they might have on their agenda for August. So we're watching that closely. I know Representative Phelan as well, Representative Hunter from Corpus Christi, Senator Larry Taylor, Mays Middleton, Briscoe Kane. We're all watching very closely what the board is doing in this agenda that they're setting coming up in August. And if they continue to trend the wrong direction, I think you will see some reps and senators, some legislators in that meeting. Because that's the last thing we need right now for Southeast Texas is for the rest of the state to benefit from us shouldering the risk of hailstorms and other destruction that might happen in North Texas or West Texas or what have you. But for storm recovery and for windstorm insurance rates to be on our shoulders individually, it's not pro homeownership and it's not pro Texan. So we're going to be watching very closely, Pat, on what the board comes up with on their agenda for August.
Thank you, Senator. I know we can count on you, and we appreciate it very much. I did want to make a couple of comments as it relates to the Chamber. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I would like to, the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank Stuart for the small business forums. This is our third one. He's been there for us the entire time, and hopefully he'll stick with us throughout this forum to make sure that our small business gets all the information that they need to run their business, to improve their business, and to stay in business during this pandemic time in the history of our country. I want to thank Tom for joining us, and we appreciate you very much, Tom. Also, people like Rainey Saunier, who's participated in the past. We haven't had a chance at the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce to thank our judge and our Senator Creighton and all of our senators, city council commissioners for all that they have done for us during this horrible time. And we just wanted to say that your efforts have been appreciated, and very much you have been in our thoughts and prayers as you lead us through this difficult time in our state's history and our country. And so we are here for you, and we appreciate you. I'd also like to thank the Small Business Administration, Linda Tate in particular, and Blaine Collier, who has represented First Financial, and given us all the information that we've needed for all of the PPP loans, et cetera, and making sure that we had clarity of this information in layman's terms so that you all would understand it and know exactly what you needed to do to get these loans in and to get everything in on time that you needed to get this money. I want to thank the staff for everything that they have done to keep us afloat and moving forward. As you all know, we were planning a first responder luncheon when all of this happened. And now we have another whole perspective of what a first responder is. And so I can't wait for us to get past this so that we can thank all of those folks that are our heroes and our sheroes, and give them an opportunity to just bask in the glory of what they have done for us. And so we look forward to that day for sure. And remember that your Chamber of Commerce is here. We've been here for 130 years. We plan to be here. Call on us. We need to hear from you. Give us some ideas of other small business forums that you think would be beneficial to you. We're thinking that our next one might include something on making sure you understand your insurance, your business insurance, and TWIA, and all the things that you need to come up to speed with as it relates to this very difficult topic of insurance. But we've got some other ideas, and we'd like to know from you what you want to hear. And with that, Stuart, those are all of my comments at this time. So
Pat,
thank you for the opportunity.
Pat, thank you. I believe we've heard that Chief Durso is now
Great.
available. There.
Okay.
Welcome, Chief
Chief.
Durso. I would like to welcome you today and thank you for your participation on the call. If you could give us your perspective from as far as law enforcement for the city of Port Arthur on what plans and preparations and response or whatever that you anticipate for the upcoming hurricane season, and just give us a little insight on what you're planning for.
As far as hurricane preparation,
Yes, sir.
okay, we met with the city manager on a few occasions.
Could you speak up a little, Chief?
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, much
Okay,
better.
we met with the city manager on a few occasions, and we've met with city staff. We have a meeting that's supposed to be scheduled for tomorrow with city staff to discuss what we have in place. We've checked all our sites. We've checked with all our local leaders to determine what their roles are, and we're still working on some things.
Specifically, do you have any specific plans for certain city facilities like the Civic Center or other schools or any other places as far as shelters in place go, if necessary?
We have all our shelters identified. We've identified the Civic Center. We've identified a location on Proctor Street at the Buddhist Temple, and we have Red Cross on board. We've been in contact with Dr. Porter Reed and his staff. And what else did we do? We've resecured our contract with the local hotels around here to make sure we have some place to stay for staff.
Chief, have you had any coordination with the industrial sites regarding hurricane preparedness and evacuations, and how are you all gonna handle the workers coming back to support industry?
Yes, we have the EMC coordinator, Jeremy Houston, is handling that for us. Also Louis Havens and Michael Freitas. We've also retained John Owens as a contractor to guide us through this, because John retired, and
He just thought he retired.
yeah, he just thought he retired, but he signed a contract with the city to handle emergency situations for us and give us some guidance. Because that's one of the veterans that we lost. With him, we lost some huge experience. Of course, everybody knows John, and we're trying to get the new guys acclimated. And of course, they know Louis, but Jeremy Houston's new to the EMC, and he's training under Owens.
All right.
Very good. Do we have any stated questions for Chief Durso?
I have one last comment here. Judge Brannick had to leave, but he did want to point out, and this was covered, I think, in both our first and second sessions, that if there's any employers out there that are having difficulty getting their employees to come back to work because their unemployment benefits are actually a lot more than what they were receiving in the way of salary, the state of Texas has a form that they want employers to submit to the Workforce Commission indicating those employees who have elected not to come back to work, and the Workforce Commission will terminate their unemployment benefits, thereby making actual employment a little more attractive once again. So if any of our employers are out there are experiencing that problem, The forms are out there. If you need some help, we can help you find it, or you can call the Texas Workforce Commission. But we desperately need to get everybody back to work, whether they want to or not. It's time that we do. We seem to have taken all the necessary precautions to be able to address concerns as they come up. The chief of police, the mayor, the county judge, our state senator, everyone has worked diligently to ensure that not only we can survive this period, but we can prosper immediately afterwards. And that's what we do at a Chamber of Commerce, is we encourage, we help, we cajole in whatever way we can to get our membership to be as prosperous as they possibly can. That's all the comments I had. We are right up at 1 hour here. I appreciate everybody who attended and participated in this. We're finding these programs are quite helpful. As Pat alluded to, we'll probably do another one again real soon. Probably we'll talk about insurance. That seems to be a popular topic here in the last week. And if there's no other questions or comments, I think we're adjourned.
You want to, while we wait on him, do you want to tell us about the industry show that we have planned for October?
Yeah, I would love to, Pat. Thank you for the opportunity. We had our industry show scheduled for August, and after talking to some of our industry partners, we decided to give our businesses a little breathing room so that they can get back on their feet. And we have scheduled our new industry show for August the 7th. So we're excited. We've already had companies being signed up for that. We have our industry partners like Motiva, Total, BASF, Valero, Golden Pass, LNG, Cheniere, Entergy, Texas Gas is going to be there, our Small Business Development Center, our workforce. We're excited. So we have about, I'm looking to my screen here, but we probably have about 15 businesses that have already signed up for that. Joe Tan and Raquel are really helping promote it. So it's October the 7th. It's from 2 to 6. And we have booths available. Our booths start out at $1,000. We have opportunity for you to be in the lobby as low as $500, but we're willing to work with anybody because we know it's very important to our community and all of our contractors out there that they get to visit with the plant managers or procurement, or just visit with each other to know what each other does in our community. So please stay tuned for that. It's going to be good.
All right, folks, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn and we will rejoin in the coming weeks. Thank you again, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.